Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Jenny. I'm from Gina K Designs. Thank you so much for stopping by to spend some time with me here today. I have created this YouTube channel to share paper crafting tutorials and inspiration with all of you. So if you like the content that you see here today, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I'd love to have you along my card making journey. In today's video, we're going to have a close-up look at the Gina K Designs Autumn Splendor card kit, and then we're going to make 5 projects with this kit. So you can sit back and relax and enjoy the video, or if you have this kit, you can pull out your card kit and craft along with me. Okay, so here is the Gina K Designs Autumn Splendor card kit. We'll just go through the contents really quickly. It comes all wrapped up with this beautiful seal. And we'll break the seal. Not really break the seal, just slip it out. That's kind of cheating, but I like to save it. Okay, so here are the 2 stamp sets and the dies that you get. First you get the layered leaf prints, and it's got 4 different leaf designs and some sentiments that you can pair together. And then we've got, these are the colossal cone flowers. Now both of these sets are large 6x8, and then we've got the mandala burst stencil, and Gina K Designs has now started engraving the name. I've got it backwards there, but there we go. You can see the name of the stencil and Gina K Designs right on the stencil, so you don't have to worry about misplacing the name of the manufacturer, so you know who made it. Now we have 2 die sets that go with both of those stamp sets, and they come, all of Gina K Designs dies come on a sturdy board from Stampin' Storage, which I love. So I'm just going to stamp out quickly the layered leaf prints so that you have a good idea of what they look like. I did forget to mention the cardstock. There are 15 half sheets of cardstock, and the colors include faded brick, honey mustard, prickly pear, charcoal brown, and plum punch. So I've loaded up the first maple leaf stamp, and I'm just conditioning it with my hand just to get off any of the manufacturing residue. And then I'm going to pull out some of my Gina K Design ink and layer up these leaf prints. So we'll just go through this really quick so that you can have a good look at it, and then we'll jump into the card projects for today's video. So this card kit is jam-packed full of stuff. So now that we've had a look at it, let's make some cards with this kit. For my first card, I've got a piece of Bristol Smooth cardstock. I'm going to heat emboss one of the flowers and the sentiment, and I'm going to watercolor it. So I've got my paper loaded up into my Misti, and I'll use my anti-static powder bag to ensure that the embossing powder doesn't get stuck anywhere that I don't want it. And I'll select one of my images, and I'm going to do them one at a time so that I can get the stem lined up nicely. So I'll start with the first cone flower. I will stamp that using Gina K Designs watermark ink, and then I will use Brutus Monroe gilded embossing powder. This is a nice fine detail gold powder. So I'll use my heat gun and I will heat set that, and then I will come in with the stem and I will do the same thing, making sure I use my anti-static powder bag. I'll stamp the stem down, I'll heat set that, and then for the final step I'll do the leaves and the sentiment. So I've used the same embossing powder for all of the elements to my project here. And then off to the right hand side I've got some P.H. Martin liquid watercolor that we're going to use to color this flower. Okay, so I'm just dropping some of my watercolor into my little palette off to the side, and I'm just gonna lay down some color. I'll concentrate it close to where I think the darkest part will be, and then I'll just take some water and pull the color out. Now, I'm not a watercolor expert by any means. I'm terrible at it, but I try because I want to get better. So here you'll notice I put down way too much color, and then I just use a little rag to sop up some of the color and then try to work it back in. So as I said, I just do my best. I'm not very good at it, but I'm trying. I'm just going to change the leaf here because I don't like the green, so I'll add more of a darker green here. I'll just paint over what's there already, and I'm much happier with that color. And I'll add a little bit of that into the center of the flower. I think that just makes it look a little bit more realistic. And that's it for painting. Now I've got a piece of the cardstock that came in the kit. This is the plum punch, and I'll just score that in half and use my bone folder to give it a nice sharp crease. I've got a piece of craft foam that I'm going to put behind my flower, and then I'll just adhere that to my card base, and then we're going to call this card complete. Here's a close-up look at the finished project. For project number 2, I'm going to be using this same Colossal Cone stamp set, and I'm going to watercolor a background again. I'm using the same watercolors, and then I'm just using an angled brush, and I'm using the same Bristol Smooth cardstock. So I'm just going in rainbow order, and I'm just making quick swipes across the cardstock. I'm not spending too much time worrying about the blending, or I'm just swiping the ink across to create a nice rainbow background. And you'll see for some of it I go back and just darken it up a little bit to make the colors a little bit more vibrant. And that's going to be it for the background. Now I've dried that along with my heat tool, and I'm just using my bone folder to help with some of the warping, just kind of like curving it around the back to straighten it out. And I'm using the large flower in the stamp set and the greeting that says a very happy hello. I'm going to ink this up with VersaFine Onyx Black ink. This is a pigment ink, and I want to use this because I want to heat emboss. So I'm going to use some fine detail clear embossing powder, and I will heat this until it's smooth and melted with my heat gun. And then I've got a card base, a top folding 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm going to use a piece of craft foam behind here. It'll give us some nice even raised dimension, and it'll also help with the warping. I'll use my tape runner to adhere the foam to the watercolor panel, and then again a tape runner to adhere the panel to my background. I'm going to embellish this card with some Nuvo gems. They're iridescent, and I'll use Nuvo Deluxe adhesive to adhere those down. And here's a close-up look at the finished card project. Okay, moving into project number 3. I changed directions in the middle of this project here. If you'll see, I have some leaf images stamped off to this side. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with them yet, but so anyways, I've got a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base, and I'm using some Gina K Designs watermark ink here, and I'm just stamping a pattern randomly over the front of this card base, and I'll use some Brutus Monroe gilding embossing powder, and I'll heat set that with my heat gun until it's all smooth and melted. And I did get a bit of warping, so I'm just going to slip that in between the plates of my Gemini Junior and run it through my die cutting machine to help flatten it out just a bit. So that seemed to work, and I just used my bone folder to help me along the way as well. And I've got the Forever stamp from the Layered Leaf Print stamp set, and I'm going to stamp that on some white cardstock, and I'll heat emboss that with the same gilded embossing powder as well. I've also used my anti-static powder bag on this piece of cardstock to make sure I don't get embossing powder wherever I don't want it. So I'll trim up this little panel here to fit across my card base, and I'm also going to use a few pieces of scrap fun foam, just some random strips I have laying around to help me get some even raised dimension. So I'll just trim those out and adhere those to the back of my card. and pop that up to the front of my card base. I'm going to use my T ruler to help me make sure that my sentiment is straight. And that's going to be it for this card. It's a fairly simple, easy to recreate project. Here is a close-up look at the finished card. Okay, moving right along, we are going to ink up the first layer of the layered leaf prints with some fresh asparagus ink. And then I'm going to flip the cardstock around and I'm going to wipe off my stamp, and I'll stamp again with some honey mustard ink. So I'll line up the next layer on these and I will stamp them with Gina K Design's clear embossing and watermark ink. And then I'll flip the cardstock around and stamp again. So I'm going to heat emboss these layers with some different metallic embossing powders that I have. So I'm just going to cut these apart here. It'll make it easier to manage. I'll start with one of my fresh asparagus leaf prints and I'll use the Brutus Monroe gilded embossing powder, and then I'll take one of the sweet or the honey mustard leaf print and use gold for that as well. And then I'm going to use a Zing copper embossing powder for this one. And then I've also got a Zing metallic green embossing powder for the last leaf print. So this is what they look like. It almost looks like a foiled effect. It looks really nice. It brings a nice shine to it. So I'll get those cut out with my die cutting machine. Then I've got my card base slipped into my Misti here, and I'll stamp using the Gina K Designs amalgam ink. That's the chocolate truffle color. And I'll use the Forever, and I'll pair that with the word grateful, and I'll stamp that with the same ink. And then I'm going to adhere my leaf prints to my card base. So for the first one, I'll glue down with wet glue, and the second one I'll pop up with foam tape. And do that again for the maple leaf as well. I'll glue the first one down and then pop the second one up with foam tape. And I'll just glue that little stem down so that doesn't catch on anything. I'll use my bone folder to give my score a nice sharp crease. And I lost a little bit of footage. My camera wasn't focused while I was recording. I used some Nuvo crystal drops as well as some gold glitter stickles. I just squeezed some of that out all over the card just to embellish it a little bit. And here is a look at the finished card project. For the last and final project, project number 5, I've got a card base here that I'm just scoring. It is going to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card base. And I'm just using some post-it notes to mask off the score mark so I don't get any ink where I don't want it to. And I'm using the mandala burst stencil, and I'm just going to tape that down to my surface, and I'll use a piece of post-it note at the bottom as well to make sure that I don't get any ink on my card base. So I've got an ink blending brush. This is just a regular cheapy brush that I use, a set that I bought off of Amazon. I'll link those below. Starting off with apple mint ink, I will ink the center of the mandala burst up with the apple mint, and then I'm going to use a microfiber cloth to wipe my brush off. And the next color is the ocean mist. I'm just using light even pressure and going around in a circle to create a nice blend between the colors. And then the final color is the powder blue. I'll just use my brush in a circular motion until I'm happy with the blend. And I'll use my microfiber cloth to wipe off any residual ink sitting on the top of my stencil, and I'll peel up my little mask, and here's our finished design. I'm going to use my scoreboard to create some little scoring details so I can stamp my sentiment in the middle. And I'll score on one side and then I'll flip it over just so that I can see where I want it scored, and then score nice and firm so that the edges come raised out on the front of my card base. And I'll use an acrylic block and some VersaFine Onyx Black ink, and I'll stamp in my heart. And we'll remove the excess mask, and I'm going to heat emboss this little sentiment with clear embossing powder. And I'll make sure my heat gun is good and hot before I bring it to my card base so I don't warp it, because this is a 1-layer card. And I've got a couple of silver peel offs that I'm just going to slip in between my score marks on both sides of my sentiment, just to create more focus on the sentiment and highlight it so that it draws attention to it. And that's going to be it for this card. Here's a look at the finished card project. So that's it for today's video. I truly appreciate all of the support and the likes, the thumbs up, and the subscribes. It really means a lot to me. Here is an overview of all of the projects that we completed here today. I hope that I've given you some inspiration to use with your Gina K Designs Autumn Splendor card kit. Check out some of my other videos for lots more card inspiration, and keep an eye out for upcoming videos in the future. I'd really love for you to hit that subscribe button and follow me along with my card making journey. Thanks so much for spending time with me here today, and have a wonderful day.